Ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ bá jó, Olúwa mi ò dìde ojú ṣẹ̀kẹ̀rẹ̀.
Welcome, everyone, to Theoryforge Chronicles, episode 13, and we are at the end of round one. I am Phantom X, of course, joined by Diggs, and the legendary Notoxin has joined us for tonight. How's everybody going? Doing okay?
Great.
Doing good.
I assume everyone has been paying close attention. Diggs, you were with me last night, so we are at the end. Any surprises? I guess we'll get to
there are
that.
a couple of surprises.
Yeah.
But
Well, I'm sure anyone watching this already knows the order. It is up in the middle of our screen, so you can see it there. I apologize if it is a little small. I tried to fit it as best as I could. We are going to go over, I guess, some of the end statistics, and then just look at the maps, too, and kind of see what we think about what everyone picked. So I'm just going to start with sort of the end, and I'm going to get into a little bit more of some of the statistics I kind of purposely left out. So the last time we talked, just to not change anything with voting. So total IP, for those who do not know, there was about, and this is based off Caspian's posts and things, there was probably about 56 million IP out there to be voted with. I do not know the number of people, so absolute votes, but I can tell you there was about 56 million IP. We ended up with 34,884,655 IP in total, so that's 62%. I think we talked about that yesterday, where we didn't know exactly how much more would be put in. I believe Caspian's last post, it was 54%, so we did have an increase of 8% in total. That's fairly good, considering that 24 hours before that was 1%. So a lot of people did join in at the end here, which was kind of expected. I do not know how percentage of voters. The last we knew of that was 37%. I'm guessing somewhere between 40-45% of people probably voted. I have no way to know that, but that is sort of the end of where we're at. Out of that, the top was Luna. Luna, out of the total votes, cast 43% of them. Angelica, 32%, and Celine, 25%. So that's sort of a breakdown of which servers cast the most. I do think that means Luna probably has a higher server population, and obviously Celine probably has a lower server population. I have some other reasons to believe that, but we can get in that too later. So there's those are the kind of overall statistics. It was interesting. So go ahead.
Neuro, did you vote?
Yeah, I voted 100% of my influence on map I, and that was very early on.
Okay.
That was my absolute favorite among the ones that were initially offered, based on trying to get the most fair and least choke pointy sort of configuration. That being said, H, I've gotten a lot of love from that from a lot of people, and after looking at the ones, that's actually one of the ones on my my original list of 5. Let me go back to that. In fact, that was in chat here. Was that in general chat? It was H, K, M, P, and T were the ones after I did a bit more research that I kind of ended up deciding on. And that was after I had voted for I. I didn't really care. So the fact that H and K are both on that list is pretty cool.
Yeah. Some other interesting things. Actually, it was kind of...
Well, I've
go ahead.
A question for you guys.
Sure.
Because we have a question. Do you think that people who aren't higher up thought their votes didn't matter? And I'm wondering... I'm wondering even how that factored into the switch over. Didn't a bunch of people vote for Oceania at the end? Like they moved their votes from one.
So that's yes. They apparently upgraded something or changed some things this morning. People found out that they could actually through the API vote for some of the Oceania. I don't know why they would do that, but they did. I do believe Caspian said all of those votes, of course, are being thrown out. But I don't know why you would do that. It has absolutely no bearing on anything. Might as well just sit on your votes. But
yeah, some people are going to do the dumb thing if the dumb thing is offered.
Right.
Well, it's cool.
Oh, well.
Yeah, it's cool to kind of figure out the system, but what's the point of that? I mean,
it could be that those were all Oceania players that were waiting. It's like, holy crap, it's opened up. Vote, vote, vote.
maybe. I mean, you have to think about that. I mean, I've always wondered about that. Yeah, I'm West Coast with you guys, but I could have voted for any. Sir, and we saw that. I mean, that's part of what I'll kind of mention at the end there. There was
I figured that's what you were hinting at.
You know, there is no sort of check that have you pledged to a server and are you only voting on that server? So, you know, I'm betting if I was with that group, I'd probably just, for the heck of it, vote just to do it. Depending on how devious you are, you can, and how much IP you have, maybe you actually start to flip things. But yes, they did do that. I don't know what point this morning, and I checked.
Yes.
There were.
So to answer the question about, do you think that people who aren't higher up thought their votes didn't matter? I only have 600 something influence, and that's more than zero, but on a scale of 0 to untold millions, hundreds of thousands even, it's nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. That being said, drops in the bucket count. It's they do matter. Just because somebody has some portion of the influence doesn't mean their word is the law of the land.
And I guess that's a good point to bring this up, and we talked about it a little bit last night. I'll just go over the top two, because I think everyone sort of presumes for each server there's a top two, and those are going to be one of the two that will eventually get picked, right? That the kingdoms have settled on this or that. That doesn't, to me, seem to be the case. So Angelica, it's top two. So map I had 24% of the vote. Map H had 22% of the vote. Not one of those has greater than 50, and in fact, that leaves 54% of people voted for other maps. So it's not it's the same. Yeah. Luna, their top one was 18%. Second one was 18%. Selene, 27 and 15. So there is no clear top two.
They're not only are they not clear, they're absolutely 100% arbitrary at this point. At this point, it's a blank slate. Now we're going to see more of the borders. Now we're going to see more of the physical features defined. And once we know that, all of them might completely change in value across the list of 5. It could completely invert. And we won't know that until we see it. So while we did come in with, some amount of, maybe fake prediction that, based on this one having a high percent, it could do better in the future, I think we can actually throw those out entirely, and it's really going to depend 100% on how it actually plays out, what we actually see in terms of how they're defined, where everything's at. They're going to erode the coastlines a little bit, I believe, reshape some of the borders and stuff, make everything make a lot more sense. This was just broad strokes. They're going to make it look a lot more, still not super granular, but a lot more granular than what we see right now in these giant, blobby, swathy things.
Yeah. And
I was surprised to see a push for L on Selene. I thought it was going to be B and C.
There was so much in the end there, I couldn't keep up with it. I know there was some. I know there was some politicking going on. I know that for sure, but I'm not in those groups, so I don't know it specifically. Yeah. But I can tell you, all the way up till the end, there was a lot of inside. If we get this map, we don't want that kingdom to take that area, all the way to the end. And Nero, back to the percentage thing. I guess my point was, say you're Angelica and your nobility wants map I. Well, you only have 24% of the IP at this point. So you're going to have to campaign to get other people on board. I guess that's my point, is that I think that, there's the majority were not within those top two. So I don't know that people feel like they didn't matter. Certainly in this round, I think anyone who doesn't feel like they're part of a nobility will have more input, because now instead of 20, there's 5, and I feel like that means your vote does matter more.
I'd really like to see Celine go with P. That was one that I thought would be pretty cool.
Serpentius was saying something about that with the nobility. I think everyone other than nobility had greater influence than nobility put together. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he put in a quote from Caspian, I think.
Yep. And that's so everyone else that's not necessarily, and there's still a lot of IP out there. I mean, we assume that everyone that was going to vote has voted. I guess that's not necessarily a good assumption. They could be waiting for round 2. And there's 38% still out there that wasn't even used. I don't think that round 2 will use 100%, but that could even go up. So I think a lot of the kingdoms have some politicking to do outside of their kingdom to try to get people to fall along a line that they want. But you're right too, Nora. As soon as they start putting in the lines and we get more detail, who knows what comes from that. So I just really wish I had access to the information. I know we won't, but it's going to drive me nuts to sit there through all of round 2 and not have a computer to look at what the statistics are. I'm just going to.
Oh no.
And then real quick, what's the difference going to be? So next, we're going to see duchy lines. But then what's the domain and settlement part? That's not part of round 2.
No, this is just.
So what's, so what's domain and settlement? And where, I don't even know what domain is. Settlements, I have somewhat of an idea, but.
We don't know the when. But that will be where you actually, so right now is just picking the map. So eventually it will come where the kingdoms actually select where their domain, where they want to be. And then that will come later.
But I thought if we see the duchy lines, I would think that would.
Well, you see the lines, but that doesn't mean that doesn't mean you get what you want. There's going to have to be a whole selection process to that.
Yeah, this in phase 2, we're going to see a better idea of where the kingdom's different duchies will be, but not specifically who gets to be which kingdom.
Okay, so we just see lines, but not which are actually where. Okay,
right.
But it will be more information, more valuable information. And it could be very well that the kingdom that pushed for the number 1 doesn't want it anymore. They have to look at one of the other 5. That very well could happen. One thing I wanted to mention are ties. So I've pretty well figured out how the ties work. Now again, I do not have access to absolute votes, but I could predict out of the last 7 posts of what the official numbers were. There were I found 11 ties, and there was a very specific order. And whenever there was a tie,
predictable.
Correct. Luna always won, Angelica was always second, and Celine was always third. And that for all 11 ties that there were, that fit the pattern the whole way. And that again happened here. There was a tie for map R in the 3rd spot, and that went to Luna, and then Angelica had to pick a different one. I think that again comes down to, based on an absolute vote, that just shows us again that at least as of this round of voting, the way it appears, and based off the total IP spent, East Coast has the higher server population, and West Coast has the 2nd highest, EU has the 3rd.
I don't know. The thing I always think about with that is, when you offer something like this, how many people from Oceanic and how many people from Europe are going to play on the West Coast and East Coast servers respectively, because there's going to be a higher server population there. And even though, yes, there's going to be some latency by comparison, a lot of people don't care. These are people's crews they've been playing with forever. For example, Back when I first started on WoW, for the time that I did play back in vanilla WoW, the server that I played on was the one that Australia decided was going to be the official West Coast server that they play on. That was BlackRock for PvP. And so we had tons of Australian players that we played with. Even when, I believe when they opened up servers on that side of things later on, it didn't really matter. People are already entrenched. People are already playing with the people that they were playing with. And that was great because going back to PlanetSide 1, again, we were playing with people on the West Coast who were, out in the Australia and New Zealand regions.
Yeah. That could be. And that's just an estimation of this round. That could change second round. I won't have access to the numbers, so I won't know. But that was a very clear sort of pattern as far as the tiebreakers. But there was only one, so it was not too impactful. But as I guess two of our predictions yesterday, Diggs, as you mentioned, Map L, we did say Selene was going to get Map L. They did. Luna almost caught up with Map H. If they had about another 200,000, 300,000 votes on Map H, they would have taken that from Angelica. And they would have kept in as well, but it's not my server, so I don't care. We pointed that out yesterday. One of the interesting things was just watching how everything came down to the end. So I've been tracking data typically just hour by hour. The last, 2 hours, I changed that to every, I think, 10 minutes. And then the last 30 minutes was every minute. So just to see how things shifted as you got to the end. And it was super interesting. The last 2 minutes, so the very last 2 minutes of being able to vote, Selene actually had a 409,000 IP placed into their server in the last 2 minutes. And
that could have been one person.
It might have been. 336,000 of that went to Q. There was a lot of other internal shuffling too, which is interesting. But out of this, they were the one that got a big chunk right there at the end, and it basically all went to Map Q. Map P also got 62,000. And then Map J got 22,000. I would point out that did absolutely nothing to change the outcome of the server selection, or the map selection. That in 400,000 did nothing to change what was going to happen. So whoever did that, good try. Didn't really do anything. Just more or less solidified, I think, the order. Because Q and P did end up 4 and 5. So it's just interesting seeing at the very end. There was a lot of sort of micro shifts. Angelica stayed pretty much even the last 2 hours, not a whole lot of change within their order or anything like that. And then Luna, there was sort of a lot of here and there. The last 2 minutes, Map K gained 146,000 and Map N lost 162. Again, it didn't do anything to the outcome that last 2 minutes, but it's just interesting seeing how everything changes around. A lot of it is small. A lot of it is probably clearly just one person. But there were some big chunks here and there. It didn't do anything. Good try, but didn't really change the outcome. And then I also looked at the last 2 hours, and that actually did change some. So in the last 2 hours, Selene actually ended up with 706,000 IP put into their server. Luna had 465,000 put into their server. Angelica actually lost 136,000 in the last 2 hours. So someone took their IP out of Angelica and put it somewhere else. That actually did change the outcome. So before those changes, the order would have been, it's at the very end. So Selene would have ended up, instead of QP at the end, it would have been JQ. And then Luna would have had I instead of J at the end. But it could have changed.
I was expecting, I know what I was going to say. I was not planning on voting for R, so I wasn't checking. Like, I figured it was going to be I, H, and L. But then there was a push yesterday morning, I think, in Ashland on Angelica to vote for R. out of the blue. And I didn't really know R was, I think they wanted R and S, maybe out of the blue. And they were saying, don't even vote for I and H, just put everything into R. Maybe I need to do what you did and just pay attention to hour by hour, start paying attention to.
So they got it to a tie, but they lost the tie. So
what they're hoping for.
Yeah. Their IP difference, just looking at it here, was about 700,000. So it's not a small significance. It's a pretty large number.
Yeah. I don't know about those maps. I kind of like R a little bit. It's a little weird. Definitely do not like S.
Well, we can.
Did you see anything on Discord, by the way, in the official Discord, about a push for L for Celine? Why that might have happened towards the end? Because all I had heard was B and C, so I was kind of surprised that they even cared about L.
I don't know anything specific. I know it was sort of a race. I don't know. And in the map voting channel, anyone that hangs out there, it was just sort of a constant. People have been changing their names. Vote B, vote M, vote this, vote that. No real rationale as to why. Just do it.
Okay.
I don't know why they. Maybe someone in chat knows. I don't.
I mean, I thought there was the consensus that there was the kingdom consensus that they were going for B, and then that one broke off and did C.
Well, they had held L for a while, and I think it was Angelica. Had taken it the last 24 hours, and then they got it back. So, but speaking of maps, if you guys have them, we can actually just look at some of the maps. So we'll just start with Angelica, and I've only got the top 3 loaded, so we can kind of look at them and see what we think, what people have. I am going to try to see if this works. So, yeah, there is map I. So that is number 1 for Angelica. I'm not a fan. I don't like choke points.
Me either.
That's not too bad, though.
It's 2 different kingdoms that you have to interface with to get across that choke point in the middle, which can maybe make things a little less terrible or not. Everybody gets a decent amount of coast to work with, so if everybody just takes the boats, that's really what it is. With a lot of these choke point ones, if everybody takes the boats, because everyone usually gets a lot of coast, then you're not really going to have to worry about land as much.
Yeah.
So that's I.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on I?
No, I'm not a fan. I guess we'll get to what we think it. And here is H. I have to say, out of most of them, this would be my ideal map.
I like H. I like that it's got that water in the middle. I can't remember if it was during the show or before the show where I was saying that the inland sort of coastal sea there, the coast and the sea there is going to mean that everybody's going to get a piece of a lot of different water technology. Hopefully it's going to get their boating and seafaring skills really good, really quick. And having that, what is it? 1, 2. It's actually just 2 kingdoms that share that bay there, but it's 4 different biomes. So there's definitely a lot of great trade opportunities and potential to happen there.
H will be pirates and more pirates.
Why not? I won't be going in the water. I don't have a choke point.
Uh-huh.
All right, and then the last of Angelica I have up here is S, which I absolutely do not like.
Yeah, not a fan of S.
That would be my least favorite out of the 3, if I had to.
Very much choke pointy. At the very least, the Kingdom 6 and Kingdom 1 have 2 neighbors so they're not completely cut off. But it's still a choke point map. I'm not a fan.
But the choke point map should cause contention if the biomes are. I don't know. It depends on who holds them. Again, I wish that there were dross on either side or something like that, so I knew that it was almost guaranteed people would be trying to control that choke point, like it was necessary due to the environment, not just because.
My belief remains that Soulbound has to enjoy choke points more than anything else, just because of the conflict that's going to generate.
Yeah. I mean, that area looks like Naren and also Naren for the two choke point continent or biomes rather. So
yeah,
you know, could be buddy.
But what is that? What is that northern one at the bottom? Is that Weird and
the northern one at the bottom?
Glasses.
I do. I can't read. One.
And
one is Weird and one is Turesk, is it?
You have a bigger map up than I do. I just
look at S. Let me get there. I was on a different map. But. Oh, Dross. This one is Dross, and the other one is Weird. These two that are at the top are at the northern part of the southern continent, basically. So Naren, and then Naren is at the top of the choke point, and Weird and Dross are at the bottom of the choke point, right?
On S?
Yeah, blue and yellow. That's Weird and Dross.
The two on the choke point are Naren and also Naren.
At the bottom of the choke point.
At
blue
the bottom.
Yellow. Blue and yellow.
Oh, the blue and yellow in Kingdom 4. Is that what you're saying?
Let me see. Yeah.
There's the Turesk, Dross, and Weird. Yeah.
Yeah. So Turesk is the choke point, right?
No, Naren is the choke point.
And what's on top of it?
Naren.
Naren and Naren. Okay.
So
Naren and Naren, and then Weird and Dross.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then Kipik further north.
So yeah, I wish there was some reason that I know about to go through this choke point between either Dross and Dross to get to Naren.
So.
But I don't know what that is.
So I don't have the other two loaded up here. I don't know, out of the 5, I guess we could name our favorites since we only have 5, if we have a favorite. I would say I can go first. Mine just is still H, like I mentioned before. I think out of what we have, that's probably going to be my preference.
I voted for H.
Yeah, I'm fine with H.
All right, there you go. Vote H. Everyone, even if you're on Celine or Luna, just vote H for us. Help us out. Okay.
There's a way to do that.
All right, so we can, I guess, look at the next one, which is map A. Oh, you voted.
Sure.
Oh, that's sad. I voted for D.
Sniper voted for D.
That's so sad. I looked. We actually, just before we move on, D actually was, what did I say, number 10?
On Angelica?
D was 10th for Angelica, so it wasn't in the bottom 10. Where it suffered is it was last on Luna, which meant it got no IP because Luna had most of the IP. And then Celine, it was 3rd to last, but it was 10th on Angelica. So there's some people who wouldn't have minded it, I don't think. All right, so on Luna, this is map A, which is their number 1. My immediate thought, I just, again, don't like... I don't know. I'm not a conflict person. I want conflict because I want story. Let me rephrase that. I know that's why you're laughing. I want conflict because I want the story. I don't want to be a part of the story. Therefore, I do not want to be a part of the conflict. Actually, I do want to be a part of the story. I just don't want to be a part of the conflict. Snipe, if you can somehow help me out there.
Okay.
Make the best something ever, and be the best at it.
I mean,
Oh, Caspian says M had the least votes. Okay.
I do. That is really my only reason for the choke points. I'm anyone who's watched us for any length of time knows I'm not really a PvPer. I mean, I will from time to time, and I know I'll have to some degree. I mean, that's just sort of I understand that, but I'm not someone who's going to go look for conflicts. So when I see a single point, if I'm trying to get from A to B and I have to go through a war zone, that's not fun for me. So I always look for other ways.
Well, but I want conflict. I don't like to be involved in combat, so I like conflict and finding alternative ways than combat to resolve those conflicts. So I would like to see some conflict. I'd just like to see more ways to resolve it than combat.
I guess that's a good way to put it. I would probably fall along the lines there with you. When I think PvP, I think combat. So, but this, looks very similar. No other thoughts? Can move on.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely kind of cuts the racial lines in a very clear way. In the north, you've got Prothi, Brodvir, Niren, and Kipik. And in the south, you've got Niren, Weird, Turesk, Dross, and Genoa. So it's basically, if you're in the south, these are the people you're going to see. If you're in the north, these are the people you're going to see. So that, I don't know. I like things being more mixed up, not less mixed up.
I think this seems more natural, though.
Maybe. I don't know. Kipik seemed like they'd be everywhere to me, but whatever.
What's the one that's supposed to be most prevalent? Is that Niren? Everybody's Niren? Right.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to map N. So here's N. A little bit different. Any thoughts?
Yeah. It's still got kind of a choke point.
Yeah. A little bit more access, I guess, in the water.
And I guess the question there is, does that say something about Northeast and what they're hoping for? Maybe they are more combat oriented.
Well, here's the fun thing is that the choke point is weird. So, that could be either great for trade or it could be very stabby for trade. Mm. It's like, you're in our land, you're in our food, we need your supplies, we're taking your supplies, it's fine. It's how we roll.
I mean, people definitely, that's a good point, Diggs. I mean, when you look at all of the data, everyone did vote there was only one tie. They voted very differently. Because I guess one thing I didn't mention that was interesting, because it wasn't like this in earlier, as we were leading up to the end. But like Celine, when you look at their ranking of 1 through 20, their top 5 were their top 5. They got all 5 of their picks. Angelica went down to just a 7, so they didn't have to go very far down either. They're 3 and 4 by percentage. They did not get because of someone else taking it. And then Luna also. They only their 3rd they didn't get. So everybody basically got, their top, which to me says that there's just very different thinking amongst the servers. There really wasn't a lot of fighting necessarily for the same thing.
Right. Can somebody explain what Snipe wrote? Biomes exist at different latitudes. It's modified by local weather and attitude for course. So to get all the biomes necessary for the tribes and kingdoms that were decided ahead of time, we have to constrain the world generator when it generates the starting continent of each world.
That's basically kind of saying, the how far, north of the equator, the colder climates, the folks that'll exist up there versus the warmer climates and the folks that'll exist down there, and just kind of the natural distribution that would come from something like that. And really is a weird one because it does have weird on Kipik, and I don't know what kind of relationship that would be.
And I guess someone was saying that's why all the continents look similar. Which,
yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Though, not that it would matter, but it'd kind of be fun to see one of these as the southern hemisphere instead of the northern hemisphere for all of them. It really wouldn't matter unless there's some reason why the south is not exposed or whatever. Or when that cut through the equator.
Snipe says he likes N because of the bays.
Yeah, I mean that. Actually, I just replied in chat. I think if I had to pick out of them, this would be sort of a. If I had to pick a choke point map, this would be sort of what I would go with probably, just because there are some other options, and you got the curves there, so you can have some pretty easy, presumably easy naval passages and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, almost like having the lake in the middle in some ways.
So, all right, map R. You're thinking. What are you thinking?
There's things I like about R, but instead of it being a single biome choke point, it's really just 4's in the middle, and it's at least Kingdom 1 and Kingdom 6 aren't completely cut off by 2 and 5 like some of those maps. And if we're talking about like bays and inlets, it looks like it's full of them. So, little civilizations that pop up here and there around all of those could definitely be a thing here.
But it still seems like the previous map was better for getting for three tribes or 3 biomes having seafaring trade easily. Just the distance between the 3 of them is shorter. Here you have to sail a little bit more, so it's a little harder to get around most of the time, it looks like, compared to the previous map, which I hadn't thought about before, but that's interesting.
For this server, this is probably... Now, I won't be playing on this server, but this would be my probably favorite out of the 3 we've looked at.
Am I reading this right? Is Teresk in the middle?
You can probably zoom your map. I cannot.
Yeah.
No, that's Naren in the middle, not Teresk. I read it wrong. Gosh, so you've got Naren next to what? More Naren. They're all over the place. Yeah, that's basically in the middle of the Preza. Yeah. It's all right. I kind of wish with all of these you got a side-by-side of not just a kingdom map, but then a different button you could click for the kind of the racial map or whatever, where each of the different tribes would more likely appear, so you can see that easier in a glance.
Yeah, or at least the first letter or something like that.
Yeah. Some way to more rapidly identify who's going to be where than trying to match colors.
And some of the colors don't match the key, actually, it seems like, but it's not quite the right shade of green or quite the same color, blue-gray.
I mean, this one's a little all over the place, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
It will be interesting.
Yeah, they are the same colors. It's just when they're not next to each other, they don't look the same.
Especially second round will be interesting for Luna before we move on, because their top 4 maps are only 6 percentage points away from each other as you go from top to bottom. So there is a lot of interest spread out amongst all of these versus one having 30% and the other 5. These are all actually very close together in how people voted. So, all right, we can move on to Celine. There you go, map B. Anything in particular about it, Neuro?
Yeah, it's another choke pointy one, and this is definitely one of those you're gonna have to use boat sort of thing. Kingdom 3 not only has kind of the choke. Kingdom 3 has both of the choke points basically in the middle. But again, if you were to, really, really zoom in on all the little bays and inlets going around the coast, if that's your sort of thing, then it's full of those. And what else? It's weird. Quebec. Yeah. Stuff you'd normally see in the middle. Not too different there. Very small landmass in the north, though. I don't know if that would actually end up being a problem or not.
Interesting. All right, and L.
But since this was in contention,
yeah, this definitely was, as we talked about earlier, this seemed to be the map that had the most back and forth out of all of them. Of course, there was always vote this, vote that, vote this, vote that, but I'd say this and H. H ended up really not being that big of a deal, but this definitely seemed like the map that at least 2 different servers really wanted.
less choke pointy, and then this kind of bay over on the west coast is kind of cool. Well, both at the top and the bottom. Seems like easy sailing trade.
Yeah, I'm looking at everyone's got at least 2 neighbors. Kingdom 3 has 4 neighbors. Basically everybody but Kingdom 6 is passing through Kingdom 3. Which
I'm just looking at the very bottom there. That seems like that would not be a fun place to be.
No,
the little boot.
No, unless your plan is to be exceptionally defensible down there and you want to be cut off.
Yeah.
But even then, you have neighbors on both sides, so it's not like you're, super cut off. Plus, with all of that coast, you're probably going to have to develop your sailing infrastructure quickly.
It just seems seems like if you don't get along well with your neighbors, you have a long ways to sail.
That's true.
That's done. I don't know.
Do Genoa and Taras get along? I can't recall.
Well, there's not a lot. There's not really that. I mean, you've got that. If you go over to the west and into that bay, then you've got, well, I guess it depends on how the kingdoms are split, actually. If it's a kingdom war or if it's a duchy war or a biome war.
Well, because, if I'm reading this right, you've got to go more than 50% of the map to get away from your 2 immediate neighbors if you're going by water. So,
Are you thinking kingdom or are you thinking tribe?
Kingdoms.
Right.
Yeah.
And it should probably be more tribal than kingdom, but we'll see.
Yeah, who knows? I'm just saying, though, if you you're not able to get along with someone, you have a long ways to sail.
Right, but again, that should be tribal, so you should be able to get along easier with certain tribes rather than it being a kingdom war. But we'll have to see how people actually play.
Yeah. I'll leave it at that. All right, and then map C.
Map C. Choke point inlets. We've got Weird on other Weird making up the choke point in the middle. Then Naren Kipik. That's usually what we see in Kingdom 3. Kingdom 1 is completely cut off, and Kingdom 6 are completely cut off, so those kind of suck. In fact, it's really, this one is the rainbow. It is completely like horizontal bands. Nobody has more than, their neighbor in the north and their neighbor in the south. Nope, no exceptions. That's what it is.
Oh.
And it's it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing. It means, you can move horizontally across the map and you'll probably be safe. And if you move vertically, well, you better get ready to cross some borders.
So for this this server, again, we had B, and then we had L and C. Is there anyone y'all like out of the other? I'd have to go with L. Simply because there's not a single choke point.
Yeah, I liked L a lot more. Kingdom 1 and 6 do have a very tiny landmass, but that doesn't mean they can't make use of, the density of their population in that small landmass.
I would not be living down in the bottom one if I could avoid it, but
yeah, right.
Just saying. Okay, well, that's all of those maps. So we got about 10 minutes left. I don't know if, what do you guys think about going forward? Round 2 starts Monday, and we will have the lines then as well. So what do you think?
Well, so I'm kind of wondering, based on what we were just looking at, kingdoms versus tribe, and as we start getting into conflicts and moving boundaries, I mean, is that going to affect that's not going to affect the NPC makeup of these different regions, right? So, right, these divisions are going to stay the same in terms of where the tribes are.
Yeah,
because that's mostly going to be NPC driven, not player driven. Is that correct?
I believe so. I believe there's also going to be, and Snipe, if you want to, if you can confirm, I believe there's going to be some amount of preset, like this tribe might be the most dominant in the region, but there's going to be, certain percents of this and that of different tribes that can exist in the region that will have families and settlements and whatnot, predetermined through the, once the kingdoms and the duchies and everything are set down. Especially, I would imagine if there's, a lot of territory that doesn't end up with a player character mayor that, and I would imagine there's going to be a lot of these that end up being the place where if you want to start in this kingdom and you don't have any affiliation to anybody in particular, but you want to play this race, there's a decent chance that town is the one that you would end up in, because that's the one where the NPCs of that tribe have set their roots down. So the response here is, yeah, Nero, that's correct. None of the biomes will be purely one tribe or another, but the nobility of that biome will be that tribe. So it's mostly who the nobility will be, not necessarily who the overall population will be. And the fun thing with that is during exposition, that can completely change, and I imagine it will in a lot of places.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how players influence that as combat occurs and territory changes places.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there will be obviously no available data for map 2, and there will be no updates either, right? There has been daily postings in Discord by Caspian as far as where the server numbers are. That will cease to exist during round 2, correct? We will be completely blind, right?
Yeah, from what I understand, that's how they want to do it. And I think that's cool because it means you don't actually know who spent what where the actual influence is. Unless they specifically report it to us, we don't get to know. And I think that that really is going to mean you can't try to play the game or whatever. You really your vote has to be genuine. You have to vote for the thing you want, or get 4 souls and vote a no confidence by voting equally against the thing that you don't want.
Yeah.
Can't game the system, is what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, I expect we'll see a lot of people in the map voting channel saying vote this, vote that, vote this, vote that. Of course, not. Well, I hope something gets posted. Sorry, just responding to chat. I would love to have actually, side note, hey, I'd love to have the data. If you can get to me later, let me know how to do that. I won't share it, promise, just for my own interest. I'll share, unless I'm allowed, maybe afterwards. I can hold my tongue. I really can. I can keep doing this for the next 10 minutes if I have to. It will be interesting because I fully expect there'll be a whole lot of, again, vote this, vote that, but you just are not going to know if you're, if you're in a coalition and, again, going back to Celine in the very beginning, how the 5 and, all we're debating, you just don't know. You don't know if the people are going to actually vote with you or if there's some sort of swerve at the end, and you won't know until the end. But I think in addition to that, you can't discount everyone that's not in a kingdom. I still believe that is a high number of people. The way all of the votes were distributed the first round, I think that's very clear. There are a lot of people with quite a significant amount of IP who are not necessarily voting per any specific kingdom directive. So somehow you're going to have to also make sure that you're at least getting the most percentage-wise out of all of that. And you're just going to be very blind. So I actually wouldn't be surprised. I don't know that this is going to happen. It would not necessarily surprise me if what's currently like a third-place map ends up being number 1, and there are a lot of disappointed kingdoms. That wouldn't surprise me.
Right.
So I guess that's a long way of saying I don't necessarily expect a whole lot of drama over the next period of time of round 2. After we're done and we know the results, then some things might get lit. So
I hope we get this time a little bit more, because I did pay some attention to what Ashland was suggesting or what they were hoping for, but I didn't get a rationale for why they were choosing, like why the king was choosing whatever, why the so I hope we get greater rationales as they're making their suggestions.
Well, and I guess
they tell us why.
That's a good point too, because I believe I believe every kingdom that I have any kind of knowledge about kind of put it as, this is, at least for round 1, this is what we would like, do what you want. That could very well also change in round 2. It could be, no, now you have to do what we're asking you to do. They have no way of knowing if the people that they lead follow their orders. But I suspect that will also change into more of a, no, we kind of want everyone to vote this way this time.
Except for on Celine. We'll know who's not following orders.
They already know.
I'm saying.
That was made clear a long time ago.
This time we followed the orders. This time it wasn't us.
Well, Celine's a perfect example. They have a lot of outstanding votes too. So this one kingdom sitting here off in the corner, if they rally up enough people, there could be some disappointment. You know, the people that pushed their top map only, I should know these numbers by now. I've been reading them all day. What did they get? They only got, again, 27% of the total IP. So I mean that's all you got out of all that was placed for your server. So you have some work to do too. So
says Angelica Discord, there's a section now for each monarch to post their preference and reasoning. So cool. That would be good.
All right. Well, we have kind of worked our way through everything. This has been a long buildup. We are probably going to try to go ahead. Yes.
We don't know how did we think this more interesting than Searing Plague?
Yes.
Yes.
Also,
Okay.
I'm glad you mentioned that. You know, we had talked about map voting kind of having to knock it out. I don't know if knock it out of the park was the phrase that we used, but need to be really well done.
It was.
and I think it was. The only hiccup that I could find was this whole thing with the end time of the voting. You know, unfortunately, the website had it 1 hour later than what it was. Everyone knew all of the emails, all of the announcements. Didn't stop some MFers from complaining in Discord today, and you know, but whatever.
And I
Mean people will be mean and unhappy. That was really the only thing, though. Everything else has seemed to go very well. So,
Shrewd Crow says it was more personal, and I think that I did feel with map voting that I had more influence than I did with Searing Plague. It felt like I had more influence, or that people had more influence. So it was easier to see that. Even when you get to like what happened on Celine with, you know, these people breaking away and saying, "Hey, we're going for map C instead of map B." It felt like their efforts were meaningful and impactful in some way, which I didn't feel very much in Searing Plague. Like anything I did had an impact.
part of that is immediate feedback, I think, right? So part of
that's what I'm saying.
I've talked in past shows about just some of that in video games in general, about immediate feedback and how that plays into your interactions, and that's instead of seeing just a bar slowly changing over time in Searing Plague, seeing where the plague is. This was kind of a daily update. Here are the numbers. Here's where things are going. And that's definitely probably part of it. Getting to actually see the change. That's why I really hope that we can do something. I'll work with you. Round 2. Let me know. Let me know the data.
Also introduced the first bit of political diplomacy to find common interests with the other kingdoms.
Yeah, definitely. We talked about that too, that this was the first big step towards owning the world. This was your first kind of, okay, now you're starting to be part of the world that you're envisioning because you're picking the map. And versus, Searing Plague, which is great lore and everything, but it's not really, it's kind of a book. You're reading a book. This you're actually starting to play with where you will eventually play as a character. So you start to take a lot more, I think a lot more ownership over that. Especially when you're given a choice. So, all right. Any final words?
Just that if you've got a real life vote going on, I hope you've campaigned for it and continue to as hard as you have for an in-game vote. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
He's saying get your ass out and vote. So, for real.
Yeah. For real.
For real.
No joke. This is not a drill. Do the thing.
Yeah, I'd like to see you walk into a voting station and say, "I just want S. Give me the card for S. I'm voting S." And see what happens.
No.
All right. Well, as always, everyone, thanks for joining us. We will be back in 1 week, and we will have started the next round and hopefully seeing some interesting things in Discord to talk about. So as always, thanks for joining us, and everyone have a good weekend.
Yep. See you later, everybody.